So I spend a decent amount of time on Reddit, so I promise this isn't fake or AI. I'm also on mobile, going to do my best with formatting. I've been sitting on this for a while because 1, I didn't think it would still be an issue, and 2, I didn't really want to be the person posting in this Reddit forum. But ADP, I just need outside opinions on this whole situation because I'm a people pleaser in recovery, and I'm starting to wear down from constantly being told how awful I am for how everything went down the last year. TLDR at the end. I'm going to try and make this as short as possible while including important details. But this is nearly a year's worth of back and forth I'm trying to condense, so bear with me. I just put my for simplicity's sake in the title, but November of last year, 11 days after my husband, 29M, and I, 23F, got engaged, our mutual best friend was killed in an accident. He was there for our engagement, and with my husband when he picked out / bought the ring. This absolutely wrecked him and I. His parents, 55M, 62F, mentioned coming to his funeral first, and when mine, 54M, 52F, asked to come, I told them no. I explained how my husband, then fiancé, parents had asked first to come, and since our parents hadn't met yet, as they live in different states, roughly a 9+ hour drive, my parents seemed to think it was a kill 2 birds with 1 stone event. We can finally meet his parents. We especially should now that you're engaged. Meanwhile, I barely got any time to even be excited about getting engaged. I told them having a meet the parents at our best friend's funeral wasn't exactly what I was feeling like doing that day. They immediately suggest we have a dinner the night before so they can meet before the funeral. My husband and I both agree that's not any better to go out and have a fake polite dinner, the same way everyone behaves when first meeting someone, not actually people being fake if that makes sense, but putting on that show the night before going to his funeral was also not something we wanted to do. Mind you, neither his parents nor mine knew our friend. They were solely coming for me. I expressed appreciation to my parents, emphasized it was not about not wanting them there. And I understood why they would feel hurt about me saying no, but I was already so deep in grief I couldn't handle them. I love my parents, but they have a tendency to be overbearing, especially my mom. She is diagnosed with BPD, but refuses /D to take any medication or attend therapy to help with this. I believe she was also diagnosed with narcissistic tendencies, but I'm not as sure on this one. All of that being said, it was a days-long ordeal, only days after losing our friend, of my parents being furious with me for not wanting them at the funeral. My husband also ended up telling his parents not to come, and they accepted this without argument. My mom once again brought this up, over a year later, to remind me how hurt they were I didn't want them there. I understand expecting me to want their support, but to be angry when I refuse while I'm drowning in grief isn't okay either, right? Fast forward to January, I finally start planning for our April wedding. Our engagement was originally going to be longer, but after losing our best friend we moved it up. I think mostly because losing him shocked us so hard with how fast life can change. And we knew what we wanted, between my parents still reminding me about the funeral, tensions between our parents over planning. Via us BC, they also haven't spoken to each other. He and I are still trying to process our mutual grief and balance everyone, and we finally, while out for dinner one night, decide fuck it. We're gonna just go to the courthouse. This is insane. Neither of us is excited. We're only doing this for other people. Now, I knew my parents were going to be upset and hurt about this decision, but it came to a head where my husband and I chose to be selfish for our own mental health and emotional well-being. It was 90% about our grief and not wanting to have to throw a wedding for anyone, and 10% tired of the drama. I originally tried to push the wedding out a year. I explained I'd been on autopilot planning, and my heart wasn't into planning because our friend wouldn't be there. My parents shot this down immediately and repeatedly stated they understood I was upset about our friend, but we already have so much planned it was easy to just do it. I countered saying what we had planned would still stay. Just call who we've booked with and push it out a year. They wouldn't hear it, as they were funding it. I finally told them our courthouse plan that included visiting his family first after we got married. They live in the city with the closest airport. Celebratory dinner there. My husband would do a mother-son dance with his mom to a song of their choice. Then we'd fly out to my family and do the same thing except father-daughter. They wouldn't witness the vows, and my dad wouldn't walk me down the aisle. He told his parents first, and they expressed disappointment at not attending but understood why we decided what we had. My parents, on the other hand, went absolutely mental. They accused me of hating them, wanting to shut them out, which I expected, so in my original message explaining everything, I'd included, "This is not personal. I have no desire for this to change our relationship, but I do understand feelings are going to be hurt for a time, and that is something I have to accept." This is where I'm going to shorten details, but essentially this was followed by months of texts. I refused to speak on the phone until they stopped hurling insults. They refused the dinner and dance because it wasn't the same. I argued repeatedly I didn't care if the dance wasn't traditional because I simply wanted that dance with my dad regardless. They were also upset we would be visiting his family first despite knowing it was only because it made sense with the airport we'd have to go to. The amount of times I explained after being accused of telling them they weren't allowed to be hurt, saying I have not once said you aren't allowed or shouldn't be hurt. Knowing this decision was going to negatively impact you was part of why it took me so long to tell you, and why I tried to push the wedding a year. You are allowed to be hurt 100%. I have an issue with that you've chosen to use that hurt as an excuse to not only say cruel and untrue things to me, but to my husband as well. There's so much more, literal paragraphs and months worth of texts. Roughly 3 months, and they're finally changing their tune with me because I'd snapped and told them this isn't even about the fucking wedding anymore. This is about you guys realizing you actually don't control me anymore and you're panicking. I had zero intention of this event ending with me being low contact with my family and not seeing them in over a year. This leads me into, my husband hasn't spoken to my parents since I told them we weren't doing a traditional wedding. My mom only messaged me, but my dad shocked me for one, because he was always the level-headed parent. Messaged my husband a paragraph essentially blaming him for what I made very clear was a joint decision. Called him names, insulted his faith, which my dad shares, including because for my husband it was the insult that cut the deepest, not to push our faith. My dad essentially accused him of not being a real Christian because of, again, our decision. This was made even more upsetting by the fact my dad was well aware of how deep my husband's faith is and was, and that it was one of the things I loved most about him, and more, but I haven't seen the message in over a year, so I can't remember exactly what it said. But I've used the word heinous to describe it. This was followed by, and I will never apologize for this text. Sometimes men need to hear tough shit. Except nothing he said was constructive. It was just insults. My husband and I both said had he reached out in a kinder manner questioning our choice and wanting clarity from my husband's POV, it would have been different. Now, roughly 6 months post D-Day, after me discussing this shit with my parents, again via text, to the point the messages had been clicked on to read in full, and reiterating, not telling my dad to apologize, but saying how shitty what he said was, and how they can't be surprised my husband doesn't speak to them anymore, etc. My dad finally sends an apology text, which essentially was a blob of text saying I'm sorry but you made me do it, and I'm not at fault because of that. So now, 3 months out from our 1-year wedding anniversary, I am speaking to my parents on the phone again, and have a decent relationship with them. I don't want to go full no contact yet, as I truly have more good memories growing up with them than bad. But their control issues needed to have a boundary put in place. Unfortunately, the way things worked out, our wedding was where I decided to finally put my foot down. But I'm still dealing with being told my mom's decided our marriage isn't real because they weren't there to witness it. My mom asked what his parents' reaction to everything was, and I told her that they were hurt too, but said as long as we're happy, healthy, and alive they're good too. This was verbatim what was said to my husband when he told them. My mom said they only reacted like that BC we told them how they reacted first. I told her no, we told them first. So, she switched to they don't have any family who gives a shit. My husband does have a small family and some falling outs, but my parents genuinely have zero knowledge on why those occurred. The end. Result from this conversation was my mom essentially admitting a big part of why she was upset was how the family was going to react. I simply told her not a single other person cared and most people told us we were making the right choice. But the most frustrating thing is constantly fielding them, pushing me to force my husband to communicate with them again. He will never stop me from having a relationship with them, but I also don't feel the need to force him to. If my parents continue to show growth to me, I've considered beginning to encourage him to change his decision on the matter, but that's still a long ways off. I don't blame him for being done. Considering less than a year prior when he'd asked for my dad's blessing to marry me, much different things were said about him. Has anyone been able to make this work where you have a relationship with your family but your spouse does not? How did you navigate it? Did the pushing ever stop? If push comes to shove, I will choose my husband, to be very clear. It's just a gray area right now it feels like. I guess Reddit. I'm asking more than one Ada. But Ada for not inviting my parents to my husband and I's best friend's funeral, subsequently our wedding, and then proceeding to not force my husband to interact with them after everything that went down. Even though I do accept partial blame for making a decision I knew would hurt them. I haven't seen any of my family in over a year now, and I'm planning a trip after the new year, and I'm terrified of dealing with these offhand comments in person, and I guess I just need some reassurance. I'll accept we suck too, but truly we were just trying to manage as best we could at the time. TLDR. Ada for telling my parents not to come to my husband and I's mutual best friend's funeral, who died 11 days after we got engaged. To not have our parents' first meeting be at that particular event. Then ending up not having a real wedding but going to a courthouse with plans to visit both sets of parents after. And finally, for not forcing my husband to have a relationship with my family after they deeply insulted him because of a decision we made together doing what we felt was best for us. Edited. Typo/clarity.